Welcome, everybody. Wow, so many people gathered tonight, and it's just, I could feel the energy building. I hope you can too. By the end of the evening, you might be exhausted. I always thank Bev and Lynette for leading the pregame show. I have so many good things to share with you this evening. I don't want to assume that you all read the email that I sent out about this, but the big highlight is a wonderful tool for quieting the inner critic, which is just tremendous. We've been putting it to the test and it works. And just so many tips and techniques for living a life of understanding who you are, the awakened way, living the awakened way. So they're right here, the guides already grabbing me. Before we get going too much, I'm just so excited, and I want to give a huge thanks to my team here in the earthly realm, to Bev and Lynette working with me all morning and hours last night with the help of an angel in human form named Jayesh Mitha, who is an amazing app designer, mobile apps, and out of the goodness of his heart as a way to deal with the death of a loved one very close to him, he volunteered to turn the daily messages that I get every day from my guide Sanaya into a mobile phone app that we have called the Awakened Way. And it is this close to being ready to launch. And I'm so thrilled to say that it's going to be completely free to anybody, anywhere, anytime who wants to use it. And the main feature, of course, are the daily messages. And you may say, well, I can already go on your website and get those, or I get them by email, or I get them on Facebook. Well, not so many people are using Facebook anymore, or they're getting away from it. I know I'd like to get away from it. And I love the positive side of it, but not the negative sides of it. So this app, it has 4,000 plus daily way messages right in your hand at your fingertips that you can filter by keywords. You can look for certain dates. And my favorite feature of all is pushing a little button when you ask, what's the perfect message for me right now? And you see what comes up from the treasury of over 4,000 messages. And of course, as one is added each day, that pops up as a notification on your screen. So it's a beautiful way to counter the negativity that we're always bombarded with in the media and on social media by having that as handy as your phone. And it's full of so many other features, including channeling sessions going back years. Bev, you helped put all those in there. Do you have any idea how many channeling sessions are in the app?
I don't, but they go all the way back to 2013. So
yeah, there are dozens.
A lot of them.
I was just scrolling through dozens and dozens of them with transcripts and audio and video. So just a beautiful way to raise your energy. So if you're on my mailing list, which most of you probably are, you'll get an announcement when that's ready to be downloaded. So that's our big exciting news. And it really was monopolizing our day, because we have about 80 people that are our beta testers. Today, we shared it on a small scale with some people who are willing to look for bugs and make sure that it's as clean as possible before we make it totally public. So the initial feedback is very positive. It's lovely, it's beautiful, it feels good. It's a win-win-win all around. All right, so tonight is going to be like every monthly connection has been for the last 4 years. I'll share evidence from connections across the veil with the spirit world to help you remember who you are, part of something so much greater. I will stop frequently for question and answer periods. I believe Bev has already let you know you can type those in the question and answer box, not in the chat, or she won't see them. I'll try to get to a few more this evening than I normally do. All the teaching is just rolls one after the other. I won't take any breaks at all. And then somewhere near the end of the evening, we'll do a group healing session, and Sanaya will have a message for us at the end of that. So it promises to be a really great time. Oh, one little promotion I want to talk about is the Global Oneness Summit, hosted by Humanity's Team, starts October 15th, I believe. And I'm so honored to be one of the presenters. I lead a panel with Michael Sandler, and I have my own little mini session in there amongst other transformational leaders like Deepak Chopra, Greg Braden, Michael Bernard Beckwith, Bruce Lipton. I could go on. But again, if you're on my email list, you'll find out about that. But you can also just go right now to my website, scroll down just a little where it has upcoming events, 4 of them featured, and that Oneness Summit is right there. Click the link. It's absolutely free. 2 weeks of speakers, one after the other, including musical events and special meditations. It's just a phenomenal way to immerse yourself in the theme of oneness and be one of those people who makes a difference by raising your consciousness and joining with other kindred spirits to do that. So the Global Oneness Summit, they've been doing it for, I think, 18 years, about 500,000 people around the world tune into this. So imagine how our lights are just lightening up the grid around our world by being part of that. So thank you for joining me there. Let's join all together now and turn up our own lights in an invocation as we get started here, just to get centered, to set aside our busy stories and become very present here together. So just close your eyes for a minute and please take a nice, deep, refreshing breath. Feel your body sitting in the chair or on the bed, wherever you are, become aware of your body. Get grounded in that way, but also now pull in the spirit energies to balance yourself. Taking a nice breath and breathe in gratitude. And just fill your energy field with gratitude for whatever it is you're grateful for in this moment. I'm grateful for all of us being willing to spend the evening together. If you're watching us later after this evening, doesn't matter. You still pick up the energy and add your energy to this group. So move your awareness to the heart and turn up your light until it fills your aura and goes outward with no limits. There, we're all entangled no matter where we are in the world. Send gratitude to each other. We'll be doing that healing later. But may each of us hear exactly what we need to hear this evening. May we be uplifted in the presence of so much loving energy. May we come to know how very supported we are by those in the spirit realms. And so it is. Okay, wonderful. That feels good. All right, so as every month since the last time we were together, Spirit has just continued to give me wonderful things to share with you. And I'll start right off. Just a little teeny bit of evidence. Not only does it help us to know we're part of something greater, but for those of you who are practicing to be mediums or are practicing mediums, professionals, always good teaching points, lessons learned that you can apply to your connections. That's my goal. So I set to do a reading for a woman who, when we started, very pointedly told me, I want to hear from a specific loved one. And we did hear from that person, but I got hijacked by her grandmother in the middle of this connection with the loved one she wanted to hear from. And the grandmother pulled me over to the side. That's how I knew right off it was a grandmother in my system. They always stand over here. And it was so funny because the grandmother came in right away dancing an Irish jig. This is something that those who are Irish across the veil do in my readings. I just sense them dancing just like you would in some Irish dance on a stage. And for a moment, I had that very human doubt as I thought, could this woman be Irish? Because here I am looking at my client on the screen. She has dark hair, dark eyes. She looked so Italian to me. And I knew right away I'm stereotyping, but I expected someone to have red hair and freckles. But here's the grandmother. And what do I tell all of my students? Trust the spirit. Don't trust your eyes. Watch for assumptions and expectations. And I said, well, your grandmother's over here doing an Irish jig. You sure don't look Irish to me, but your grandmother is. And she said, oh, we're all Irish. And it just made my day that I had trusted. But trust me, it took me years to get to the point where I didn't second guess myself. So in sharing just this little tidbit right off the bat, I hope that those of you who doubt what you sense from those in spirit will use this just to fortify your trust in them, especially when they give you a symbol that you've asked them to do. How did my Irish jig symbol come about? The very first time I saw someone doing the Irish jig. Oh, that's so funny, right? My client, sometimes the clients are in deep grief and you have to handle them carefully and not joke and laugh. But I had a client who was really almost a comedian. She was very funny. She was flippant during the reading, just joking around. She really just wanted a family reunion with her loved ones across the veil. She knew there's an afterlife. So something happened. Oh, yeah. A loved one of hers came in and was doing a dance. And I said, this looks like this woman is doing an Irish jig. And she said, oh, yeah, we're all Irish. And I thought, oh, what a great way to know that somebody's Irish. So this is how you work with symbols. Right there on the spot, I turned to my guide, who was Boris, was my mediumship guide at the time. Now it's Brenda. And I said, Boris, okay, silently, quickly, next time we have anybody who's Irish, have them do just a little jig for me. And so every time I've done a reading since then, and somebody Irish has come through, that sign comes in. Do you see how helpful that is? But what made me laugh about this particular reading, the very first time I saw Irish, I was pulled over to the woman's grandfather in spirit. I got evidence about how he passed and his personality, and I said, ooh, he's showing me that he really had an issue with alcohol, that he really liked the drink. And I kid you not, my client said, well, duh, he was Irish. It just cracked me up. And I am not by any means saying that everybody who's Irish has a problem with alcohol. That was just the way my client reacted at the moment. So, there's one thing about energy, when it's light and you joke around, it actually improves the connection. So I didn't have to work quite so hard there because my client already knew the afterlife is real. In fact, she went on to become a mortician. My client, she had no problem with death whatsoever. Bev, you may even know who I'm talking about. Okay, so that's the first bit of evidence. I recently did a reading for a woman, much more challenging. You see how we're going to shift gears very quickly here. This was a mom whose young teenage daughter was killed in a traffic accident a couple of years ago, and she's still very, very much hurting. And I totally understand that. And it was so clear to me how badly she needed a reading and needed to know her daughter is here. And her daughter knew she needed it too, because she really pushed me to connect her with her mom under some special circumstances. And it was a beautiful connection. Her personality came through so clearly, but what I really loved was the quirks in her personality, so much so that afterwards, Mom said, you said things about her that even her friends didn't know, but we at home, her parents, really knew that side of her. And that's what you can ask those in spirit to give you. Personality traits that are specific to them, that go beyond generic, because there are very few parents who don't think their children were loving and kind and generous and all of those positive attributes that we have with our family. But this young girl had some specific ones that were her trademark. But in that reading, she showed me a bunch of lemons. In my mind's eye, I saw them clear as day. So you see an image, you open it up, and you ask the person in spirit, why are you showing me this? And that young girl said, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I said that to Mom, and she was keeping a list. She had 85 pieces of evidence at the end of our session, 85 things that were accurate about her daughter. And she didn't give me feedback as we were going along. She waited till the end, didn't give me all 85, but that one in particular, she pulled out her phone, flipped through, found a picture, and showed me a big tree at her daughter's high school, where it was a lemon tree, and all the kids had hung signs on the tree that said, you guessed it, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And clearly the message is right there in the evidence. Mom, this is not what you think you signed up for. I know you didn't expect me to leave this earthly plane before you did, but here I am now, 85 pieces of evidence, my personality, you know, I'm with you. Let's move on together now. And I know that that session in 1 hour was a turning point after 2 hours of grief. Sorry, 2 years of grief. And that's the gift of mediumship, isn't it? That's why we do this work. So it's just beautiful, beautiful healing. Now, it doesn't instantly make the grief go away, but it sure gives it a boost. And I know that her healing is taking place at a faster rate now. Okay. That same week, I did a reading for a mom who has a son across the veil. And right off the bat, he showed me how he passed. He passed by suicide, and he was fine, and he wanted his mom to know that, and he had some apologies to make, but then he showed me exactly how he passed. And it wasn't, I have a symbol for suicide. I don't need to go into it now. And when he showed it to me, just to make things go more rapidly, we use symbols. He literally said, don't describe your symbol because it will throw you off track. And later he showed me exactly how he took his own life, very different from my symbol. And I heard Mom gasp because it was kind of unusual. And she muttered under his breath, he's right here. He's right here. He's right here. And I so related to that moment for her because that was exactly how I felt when my Susan, my stepdaughter, came through the very first time in a reading with a medium, long before I knew I would one day be working as a medium. The very first time I took my husband to a medium, and she started giving us evidence about Susan, and I just gasped. And that was the moment I knew, like that mom, oh my God, she really is right here. You want to know it with your heart, you know it in your soul, but the two have to meet and just click. And a really good piece of evidence just changes your life. And it did for me in that moment. My life has never been the same, as you know, and because here we are. But for that mom to hear her muttering that exact sentiment that I had felt, the gratitude for the spirit world in that moment was just off the charts. And I'll tell you, nothing raises the vibration more than gratitude, which is why we started the invocation this evening with some gratitude. Okay. So some of you here might have been with me 2 weeks ago when I taught a first level mediumship class at the Monroe Institute in Virginia. I'm one of their guest teachers every once in a while, and it's a special environment because there are only so many rooms and people stay there and are totally immersed in it. And we eat all our meals together. So there were only 25 students and me and my assistant trainer. That was funny. I'm a retired Navy commander. They sent me an assistant trainer who was a retired Navy captain. He outranked me. He had more years in the Navy than I did. And he was like, what can I do for you, Suzanne? Do you need me to go get something for you? It was just such a turning of the tables. What a sweet guy, Fred. He just texted me today, in fact, because we did that wonderful intention setting, which any of you can do at any time, where you move your awareness to your heart. You think of someone you haven't heard from in at least 3 months, and you will them to reach out to you. And they don't realize that you're doing this, but they think of you. And if they're really good and they pick up on that, they'll somehow contact you. We had several people reported within the weekend that their person had reached out to you. And it's really magical. But Fred, my assistant, reached out to me today and he said, Suzanne, it's been almost 2 weeks, so I don't know if this counts, but the person I wanted to hear from sent me flowers. I said, Fred, it counts. It's been 2 weeks, but flowers, that's over the top. That's way better than just a text or email when you haven't heard from them in like a year. So, good stuff. But I digress. Back to the Monroe Institute. There was a time when I was getting ready to do a demonstration of mediumship one-on-one with one of the students so that people see what is good practice in a reading. And I usually scan the students to see who Spirit snags me with, who I'm supposed to do that reading for. And as I scanned, my eyes fell on one man and I felt pushed by a young girl in spirit and heard, Daddy. And there was no doubt he had a daughter across the veil. And he was there with a woman who I felt was his wife. I wasn't sure. And I thought, oh, that's got to be both of their daughters. And I checked with Spirit, am I supposed to do a demonstration of mediumship for them? And got an absolute no. It was almost as if this brief demonstration of 5 minutes would not be good enough for them. But I scanned the room again and again, Daddy. But I knew, don't do that reading now. So I read for someone else. But the next morning I came down to breakfast. Everybody eats all meals together there. And as I walked by their table, there she is pushing me again. And I looked at them and I said, you have a young daughter in Spirit, don't you? And they nodded their heads. And I said, I'm going to gift you a reading because she won't leave me alone. So we'll get together after this class at some point and do a reading. And I walked over with my tray of scrambled eggs to the table where I was going to sit. And I did a U-turn because she put an image in my head. I turned right back and I said, said to Dad, I know you have a picture of your daughter with a big pink bow in her hair, because she's showing it to me right now. And both of them looked at each other. Dad just nods and Mom said, bows were her thing from day one. She was born with so much hair. We put a bow in her hair. She had bows of every color. She slept with bows. They'd be all squashed in the morning through the time that she passed from this physical world. And Dad pulls out his phone and shows me the phone with a picture of her with the big pink bow in her hair. Now that's what I call a drop-in. Now, there were spirits of everyone in that class around, but I get my antennas turned down in those situations. So I'm not doing that all the time, but I hope that some of you will have those magical drop-ins, like I call them, because it's life-changing. And again, further cements our awareness that our loved ones are always right here. Where else would they be but here in awareness, in consciousness, just a different channel of frequency of being interpenetrating our own. I did do that reading last week for them, and she is a very strong communicator and just left no doubt that that was her. And she gave a couple more pieces where they said, that's a biggie, that's a wow. So that was a setup, absolutely a setup. So I did a reading yesterday. I'm not going to share the specifics of the evidence, but for any of you who are working on mediumship, it really showed me what it must be like to be blind and just trust when you put one foot in front of the other and have no choice but to step out. I don't see those in spirit, but I sure sense them. And I rely on systems. Like I showed you this evening, I get pulled over here if it's a grandmother. I get pulled over here for a mother, over to this side if it's a father or grandfather, and various other positions help me to determine the relationship. I might hear the relationship auditorially, or I might just know. And yesterday's reading was a total combination of all of those ways of knowing who is present. But I was completely blind, and it was such trust. My client didn't tell me who she wanted to hear from. She just said, I have quite a few people across the veil. And it was a family reunion, but I was thrilled at the knowing and being able to identify. First, we went to her mother. Now, the woman was old enough that her mother could have still been here quite easily, or she could have passed, but sure enough, here's Mom. And how do we identify each of them? With evidence of how they passed, what kind of work they did, but most of all, their personality, capturing their essence. We went from Mom over, my head got pulled over here, and I heard brother. Sure enough, she had a brother across the veil. I made sure not to say immediately, do you have a brother across the veil? Do you have a mother? Gave a bunch of evidence and said, this feels like a brother. Is that correct? She said, yeah, that's my brother. Then we went over here where I normally feel a child, but I knew, even though this was someone in their late teens, that this was not her child. And in my awareness was aware grandchild. I so seldom connect with grandchildren across the veil. And yet that's exactly who it was, a teenage grandson of hers. And we get pulled over here and we talk to Dad, getting his name. Then back over here is a woman. I said, you have a sister across the veil. Yes, I do. Then over here to the front is a man who's showing me the ring didn't completely go on the finger. I said, you have a boyfriend. You didn't quite get to marry him, but this is his personality. These were his issues. She said, yep, I recognize him too. I mean, just bouncing all over the place. Kind of like that Whoopi Goldberg movie, right? Where they're all crowding around behind. I want to talk. No, I want to talk, but I just can't see them. And at the end, I said, did you hear from everybody you wanted to hear from? She said, we could be here all night. And I have so many people across the veil, but there was one other person. And I said, tell me the relationship. She said, nephew. And I said, well, that would be over here in my system. Let's see. Very different energy, trying versus just tuning in. But clearly I had not sensed him yet. Then all of a sudden, here's the same sister across the veil, shows me arm in arm. I said, well, it's your sister's son, and this is his personality, and this is how he passed. She said, that's him. So various ways to work the energy, even if you can't see them or get them in other ways, they will do whatever they can to prove their presence. It's our job to trust. So I have just a newfound appreciation for blindness and just, like I said, putting one foot in front of the other and just doing it. Yay. Let's see. Before we take our first questions, I want to share with you the most awesome sign and synchronicity from one of my students at the Monroe Institute. People come from all over the country to go there. They've been working in raising consciousness and getting to know expanded states of consciousness and using binaural beats in the form of hemisync tones for decades, founded by Robert Monroe. And one of my students in Texas had heard about the course, and she had also always wanted to visit the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Monroe Institute is in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, just a few miles from the Blue Ridge Parkway. That was one of her dreams, to just get a rental car and drive the Blue Ridge Parkway. But her husband down in Texas was not interested in that. So she did what I encourage all of you to do. Absolutely beautiful that she knew to do this. She said, Spirit World, if I will gain information from Suzanne's class, I want a sign. A big sign. 2 hours later, she's out in her truck, sitting at a traffic light, and she got rear-ended. She said it was just a little fender bender, just a few scratches, and it's a farm truck. It was kind of new, but it already had a few scratches on it. But she's exchanging information, driver's license, with the driver of the other car. Are you ready for this? This is in Texas. The driver's address was 411 Blue Ridge Parkway. She asked if she would get information from Suzanne. And for those of you who don't have this system, in the United States, if you dial 411, that's the number for information, for directory information. And Blue Ridge Parkway is only in Virginia, North Carolina, the area of the Appalachian Mountains. It is not in Texas. So for anybody in Texas to have an address of Blue Ridge Parkway was just phenomenal. She was so excited. There was no doubt in her mind she was meant to go to that class. So she went home and told her husband. He didn't hear a word she said. You can imagine why. You had an accident? Somebody dented the car? And you're excited about some course somewhere? And she said, honey, it's a farm truck. It just has a few scratches. Well, he said, we're going to file the insurance claim. So they filed the insurance claim and then forgot about it because it was just a farm truck and it wasn't worth taking it to the garage. Well, she told me, guess what? The insurance money came in and it exactly paid for the trip. Just a nice little closure to that story. So I know the Spirit has a good sense of humor, and that's a good one. How about we take a few questions? Bev will look at those that you've submitted and pass them along.
Okay, we'll start with Linda's. When and how are new souls formed?
It's a great answer, great question, because we talk about new souls and old souls, and this is something that we can't prove. Let me just just connect closer with my team right here. And what I see is the image of a fountain. They're showing me also a popcorn machine. The popcorn popping up into the air, or the fountain, going back to the fountain, bubbles bubbling up. And they go around and they have whole lifetimes, much longer than human lifetimes. Souls are eternal, but yet it's the same energy recycling, Spirit says. So the term old soul and new soul is not quite as accurate as like a young person and an old person, but it's a constant recycling, the guides say, of source energy.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Mhm.
Victoria asks, what does Sanaya say about one person taking another person's life in self-defense?
I can answer that on my own, but just make sure the answer is fresh here. The most important factor is always motive. And they say there is understanding when the human body reacts automatically. We would prefer that one respond in other ways, but there is no judgment for this very human response. Okay. There we
Thank you.
go. Mhm. Yeah, that
John,
brings to mind, sorry,
sure.
Bev, but they're putting in my mind the thought of, I've shared in these monthly connections doing what we in the Navy used to call what if drills. What if this happened to me? What if that happened to me? How would I respond from soul awareness? And I often think, what if somebody pulled a gun on me these days? How would I respond? The immediate response, of course, is going to be to go to fear, to a place of fear. The adrenaline's going to rush. Or I often try to put myself in situations when I would feel fear and try to respond with love and see if that literally could disarm someone. I hope none of us ever have that opportunity or never need to put that to the test. But I try to always think about how love could turn a situation around, no matter what. And my wonderful friend Ingrid Honkala, A Brightly Guided Life is her book, tells the story of when 3 men were attacking her. And she looked at them and said something that stunned them, something loving. I can't remember exactly what it was that stunned them so much they all ran away. They just ran away. Okay, how about another one, Deb?
Okay. John asks, will we be allowed to travel to other star systems within our galaxy once we cross over out of our physical body?
This is the first time I've heard Brenda jump in and answer a question without me checking with the guides. And she's putting an astronaut hat on right now in my mind's eye. She's putting on her explorer suit. I was going to answer that we can go explore and travel now and do that. In fact, the Monroe Institute trains people how to have out-of-body experiences. That was their initial goal. But Brenda says you have much freer use of your consciousness without the body acting as a filter, and you can visit and explore whatever serves your greatest growth. Cool. All right, we'll move. Let's take one more. Yeah.
Okay. Several people have asked a similar question. This is from Mary. And she says, I've been waking up, and sometimes this happens when I meditate, but my body vibrates. Sometimes so much, it wakes me up. Is this something new with the energy? What is happening?
It's definitely new with the energy. I remember that happening to me. I was still in the Navy because I remember where I was stationed, in which house, in which town, and my body was vibrating so much, but I had been practicing astral travel. I was interested in it back then before any of this opened up for me, and it scared me so much that I felt like I was about to vibrate right out of my body, and it was like, it's happening. I'm doing it. And then boom, right back into the body, and I didn't have that experience. But it's absolutely what you're feeling is the movement of energy. And if you can face it without being frightened, I would welcome that and say, what do I do with this? Affirm that you are always safe and that you have a guide with you. and just play with that energy. Okay, thank you, Bev. Thank you all for the questions. I will go on now to lessons from a convicted felon. This is one that I told you we would talk about this evening. Lynette and I had the recent experience of spending 2 hours one evening talking with a professional man who was at the top of his professional ladder, well praised and well known, and received awards for being the best in his line of work, who was on some medication that has been outlawed. He says he doesn't like to make that an excuse, but was convicted of something that he's very regretful for and readily admits to, and spent 2 years in a maximum security prison. Imagine a professional person suddenly finding themselves in that situation. He said he spent the first month in a deep depression and really had to be prodded to get out of bed and get in with the other inmates. But once he did, he started to realize that he needed to work on forgiveness and self-blame. The conversation that we had with him was fascinating. He taught his fellow prisoners, those who were interested, to meditate. The conversation that we enjoyed was so eye-opening for me, because I'm always trying to find new ways to learn to connect more clearly, new ways to understand how we connect across the veil. And I had 3 huge aha moments that had me scribbling notes during that conversation. And the first one that I'll share with all of you, doesn't matter if you're a medium or not, we all want to connect. I hope that's why you're joining me this evening, with higher consciousness, with our higher self, with guides, to receive guidance and insights. And the most common question I get in classes and in Q&A sessions is, how do I know I'm not making it up? How do I know this is not my imagination when I sense a presence, when I hear thoughts, when I see images? Am I right? So this man was talking about teaching the prisoners first to do remote viewing. That's where you quiet yourself. He knows where the object is or what the object is that he wants his fellow prisoners to tune into, and they have to describe what they're sensing. It blew their minds, he said, that they were able to do this. And Lynette and another woman who was in on the conversation with us were astounded that these fellow prisoners were able to do remote viewing, because they, Lynette and the other woman, had been social workers and had both been in a prison. I've never been inside a prison, but they had visited inmates in a prison. And they said, it's always noisy in there. The lights are on 24/7. That's something I never thought about, but the lights never go out. And it's always noisy. People screaming, yelling, cursing, talking, clanging, making noise. So Lynette's question was, how did they get quiet enough to sense anything in remote viewing? And the man's answer was something that I've taught, but he put it in words that were so perfect, it just lit up my mind. And here's the advice. They noticed what stood out from the noise. Write that down. Okay? And that is the whole goal. If you're trying to hear from your own loved one across the veil, if you're trying to hear from others' loved ones, if you're trying to tune into your guides, to the angels, to your own higher self. But in this case, I'm not talking about external noise. I'm talking about mental noise, right? What stands out from the chatter, the normal thoughts, that inner self-talk that's always arising. You know your own thoughts. And that's the number one answer I've been giving all along. You know, what's different than you, what's something you wouldn't have thought of? And he just made it so clear that even for these prisoners who had never done remote viewing, they were successful because he told them, look for what stands out from the noise. So sometimes something that somebody across the veil says will sound like your own thoughts. But why did you think it in that moment? It stands out because you are setting the intention to get a specific answer, to hear information that is helpful and healing to you. It will automatically stand out in awareness because it comes with a vibration from the sender that causes you to notice it. So that's number one thing that I learned from this convicted felon. By the way, he just got his license back for his profession. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. He had a moment, he said, when he was in the prison, when all the walls just started vibrating, and he knew this reality is not as real as we give it credit for. We'll talk more about that later, about is this physical real as physical as it seems. So the second thing, actually the final two go hand in hand. When he taught them to meditate, he taught them to only meditate 1 minute at a time. I hope that by now you're familiar with my Sip of the Divine meditation that I teach on YouTube, SIP, sit in peace for 3 minutes a day to taste and feel and sip the divine and get an answer to your question and train your mind to be quiet, to notice what stands out from the noise. The Sip of the Divine is 3 minutes, but he taught them 1 minute a day. And it was profoundly life-changing for them. 1 minute. And you know why? They had never been taught to focus on anything but their story. Me, you, the past, and the future. Their minds were always focusing on the drama of their own story. But when you sit and quiet your mind for just 1 moment and just be, the story just dissolves, if only for 30 seconds of that 1 minute. And when there's no story, what's left? Well, they experienced it as love. Hugely life-changing for them. What do you mean they experienced it as love? Well, those who were in there because they had been heroin addicts and turned to robbery to get their drugs, said that the reason they became hooked on heroin was because of that initial rush was to them what they assumed was love was like. And they said that in that moment of silence, in that 1 minute of meditation, that filled them in the way that only heroin ever had for them. There was one man that said to him, I've been in here for years and I continued to crave heroin every day. And since I started meditating 1 minute a day, I no longer crave it. That is huge. So I just put on YouTube today a brand new video. It's called Find Freedom. Oh, I'm going to pull it up because the guides even told me I wouldn't remember it. Find freedom as you find God within. You can search for Suzanne Giesemann, Find Freedom as you find God within. Because at a retreat I led last weekend in North Carolina, we were talking about touching this state of pure being, this state of no story, and knowing this as love, and coming to know that this is right here within us. Those prisoners found it. And as we were talking about finding this within us, suddenly my guide said, let all of those present experience this. And I went into a guided meditation that was channeled. And happily, we had the camera going. It's a little echoey because it was a big hall. But they take us in this meditation backwards in our life till we go beyond and before the story and experience pure being. It is this just profound moment in that meditation where you may very well have finally the realization what you've been looking for outside is right here within you. So be sure to check out that video. find freedom, and find God within. Okay. But that was number 2 from the prisoners. They found love in 1 minute a day. And the other huge aha, and I knew this, but to hear it from convicted prisoners in a maximum security prison, I hope it will help you to pay attention. I've taught thousands of people how to connect with loved ones in my mediumship classes, and some people expect to be seeing their loved ones by the end of a weekend course, or even the end of a 6-week course, and they're disappointed that their meditation isn't giving them bells and whistles, and they're not hearing the voices of their loved ones by the end of the 6 or 9 or 10-week course. And I tell them that this is a process, and that it doesn't help to have expectations. It's normal to compare yourselves with others. But here's the thing. These men had never learned to meditate. They had never meditated in their lives, as we said earlier. Their teacher, their fellow prisoner, didn't tell them what to expect. He only taught them how to quiet their mind as much as possible by focusing on the breathing. That was the technique he used. There are many techniques, but just watching their breath, being present with their breath for 1 minute. And they had these profound experiences, here it is, because they had no expectations. So I've given you a big setup there. Now you're going to expect to feel love. Well, I hope you do. And if you do, that goes beyond hearing the voice of our loved ones. That will follow. But to know yourself as a direct expression of source, to know yourself as a spark of the divine in 1 or 3 minutes, that's a good expectation to have. So those are my lessons from a convicted felon. I could have sat and talked to him all night. It was phenomenal. Okay. So Bev, how about some more questions? I know remember, I haven't even gotten to the game changer yet, but I would say those, for me, those 3, those are game changers. We'll get there. I want to keep you hanging for a little bit longer, everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Aaron has a question. What is the process by which a soul decides to take a physical body? And why don't we remember that experience?
What, say it again, though, Bev. What is the process by which
Which a soul would decide to take a physical body and incarnate?
Oh, and incarnate. Okay, let me ask the guys. Oh, they're taking me back to just imagery of, I think I shared this last week, of sitting around. Oh, it was at a retreat that I shared it. We're like souls. It's like a committee saying, all right, you're going to incarnate, and they say, don't be glib about this, just answer it. All right. You choose your family, who you've been with in many lifetimes, but you choose specific soul family members who are now incarnated to be your parents based on the physical characteristics that is likely to result from the combination of the genetics, and also because of the life situations that those parents' lifestyle will bring you into. So you definitely choose the circumstances and the timing, they say right now, because there is much truth in, that's not the word, give me the right word, please. There is much value in understanding the influences of the planets at the time of your birth. So in other words, astrology really is a big factor in the characteristics and the traits that you will embody. So you choose the parents, but then you have to back it up 9 months, right? And we say, okay, we're going to go with this birth right here. So they say there's much more to it. They say you could do a whole workshop on it, but that's not my path. Hopefully that just shows you, though, a little bit of the planning that goes into that. And why? Because they say, expand on this, your soul will have many lifetimes and wants to have the full experience of being human. So perhaps in this lifetime, you already worked on these traits. Perhaps in this lifetime, you want to have a little bit of imbalance in the body in this area to see how that affects choices that you make in the life. And in this lifetime, you have a parent who has an issue with addiction, and that's going to cause you to make choices and learn to love unconditionally. So many factors, and you see them, the major ones, before you incarnate. Other ones, of course, are unpredictable based on the free will choices that all of us make moment by moment. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mary Ellen asked a question about incarnation from the angelic realms. Could an angel choose to incarnate, and what reason would that, why would that happen?
Yes, it would happen, they say, if the potential is there to effect healing and change in a positive way on a larger group of humanity. So always it's going to be to change the dynamics that are already happening when they see there's a need for intervention. And we'll leave it at that, they say. Okay. How about another one?
Another one?
Mm-hmm.
Willie asks, do pets have egos?
Okay. If by ego you mean pride and other such human traits, the answer is no. If by ego you mean awareness of a sense of separation from others, it is very different than the human way of being. Pets have, domesticated pets, yes, pets have a sense of being their own being, and the more they are around human beings, the more pronounced this becomes because of your shared energy fields. This is why you detect such distinct personalities in your pets. So it's a qualified yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on then. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Looking at my notes here. Ah, right. So at that same event where I got to talk to the convicted felon, I got to talk to a man who really changed the way I see my work as it relates to traditional religion. I had an experience once where I was teaching mediumship at a hotel in one room at the end of a large conference center. And in the main ballroom right next to us was a big Christian conference, but it was in the Bible Belt area. For those of you who aren't from the US, that's an area where the people are more fundamentalist Christian. And I could feel vibes as they found out that we were talking about mediumship in our room that were not exactly positive. There was a lot of judgment coming from people who talk about not judging people. And one of the young men in the group literally got in my face and said, "Tell me what you're teaching in there. What are you teaching those people?" And I used my best tools to remain centered, but this was a good 5 years ago, and I wasn't quite as practiced as I am today. And I shared what I taught him, and he said, "Well, here's what I know to be true. Are you calling me a liar? Are you saying I'm a liar?" So he was goading me. And I got out of the situation by just remaining in the heart. But I personally have felt guarded when I meet people who are fundamentalists in any religion, any religion. So I spoke at a conference recently, and one of the people who knew that I was going to be there emailed me ahead of time and said, "May I have 10 minutes of your time when I'm at that conference? I'd love to share something with you." And I said, "Sure." And we connected, and we're sitting off to the side in the lobby. And he told me he had been a Pentecostal preacher for 40 years. Right away, I was stunned. Okay, why does he want to talk to me? And he said, and I recently took your online mediumship course. I was stunned, absolutely stunned. And he said, I have to tell you that after the first class, I was really interested, but I started to get nervous. I started to get a little fearful. Am I doing the right thing? He felt this way. So he's relating to me that he said it just like this. I prayed to the Holy Spirit. If it's okay for me to be in this class, I want the specific sign of this. And I'm not going to share the sign with you out of respect for his privacy, but he proceeded to tell me the most magical story of how he got this sign. And it was not an easy sign to get. His grandson delivered it in a way that an innocent child just had no idea that he was being used as Spirit's messenger to bring that sign to his grandpa. It's okay for you to be taking this class. And with that sign, he said he threw himself into the class, did all the meditations, all the practices with fellow students. And when it was over, was in a situation where he felt the loved one of a friend drop in on him in the early morning hours after he awoke, and he delivered the message and it with evidence, and it was accurate. So he's now kind of feeling the waters and testing, and how far do I go with this? He's retired now and he's just having fun. And the thing that I wanted to share more than that, I mean, I literally came to tears as he was talking with me, and I don't normally, but to me, it was such a gift to say, Suzanne, stop making assumptions that other people are going to judge this work and judge me, to be honest, right? Who wants to deal with that? My soul knows, think whatever you want, but after somebody gets in your face like that, it leaves a mark. So he said, I want to look at my notes because I don't want to misquote him. It was so beautiful. He said, I said, what about former parishioners? Do they question you about what you're doing, or do you keep it hidden from them? He said, no, they know. A lot of them know what I'm doing. And I said, what do you say when they question if it's in line with Christianity? And he said, and I quote, it embraces mediumship. Mediumship embraces Christianity and blows the walls outward. It just blows the wall away. I love that because it was just like you are both human and a soul. You can be both a Christian and totally open to all possibilities, because Christianity, like all the major religions, the main tenet is do unto others, be the presence of love. And I've said all along that all of this work is totally in line with the world's great religions. It's just when we get in a box, that we become restricted. And that's where fundamentalism in any religion will box anybody in. So it's just so beautiful. I feel like I've been let out of my own little assumption box. And I hope that's helped some of you who I know do struggle with your own, the way you were raised, and how to merge that with your new awareness that there's so much more. Yay. Okay. How about some more questions, Bev? And then we'll get on to the game changer.
Okay. Bren asks, why is our current ancestry, our human ancestry, important if we choose to reincarnate into a completely different family next time around?
For the current experience. Why is our current ancestry important? The genetics, the history led to this exact mix of character traits that we were talking about before, that your soul came here to have this experience. The next life doesn't even matter right now. To the soul, it's the here and now, this experience that you're having that matters. What are you going to make of this? What are you going to create from this? How are you going to create something more beautiful from this right here? We can pay attention to the past. We can see how it led to this. Karma, really, we don't talk about this much. Karma is everything that led up to this moment, but doesn't necessarily lead to what follows, because karma can be transmuted in an instant by the awareness that we are here to love each other and dissolve past transgressions in this moment here. Yeah. Okay.
This is anonymous. In your various sessions, you talk about us being all sorts of forms in the afterlife, light, waves, watermelon seeds, energy. Will we get to be our human self in the afterlife and be able to do things we did on Earth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The guides have showed me, and they're affirming again right now. You have so much freedom of consciousness across the veil. You can be simply a light being, or like Brenda putting the astronaut suit on, you can explore other realities. You can be like the man whose leg was amputated and he crossed the veil and he said to his wife here in a reading, I'm standing firmly on 2 feet playing golf every day. And it turned out golf was his passion. You can eat all the pizza you want and not gain weight until it loses its interest, and then you move on to something else. It's all about experiencing and creating with consciousness. If you want to have a body in awareness to do that, you create that form. Most souls, they tell us, take on the perfect age, the perfect physique in which to experience that new reality. So it sounds wondrous, it sounds magical, and they say, and it is. But the thing is, once you realize that you're a co-creator right here, right now, the more you align with your true nature as love, you can become what I call a master manifester right now. Things just flow, things appear that you need because you're focused on the heart, not just focused on yourself, but focused on the big picture.
Great, thank you. Another one?
You bet.
Okay. Bonnie says, when I go near cemeteries, I do feel spirits and see people not in bodies. Do more spirits hang out in a cemetery just because of the nature of that location?
The image that I'm being shown is waves and signals to remember that you are both the particle and the wave in quantum physics form. Don't think of your loved one only as a solid figure that's either here or hanging out at the cemetery. They're everywhere as pure consciousness. You are too right now, but we're so focused on these bodies, we only know ourselves as this. But once you cross the veil, as Brenda showed me after she passed, that's my guide who was our friend, Brenda, she can visit multiple people at once and appear in spirit form to those who might see her. So your loved ones, if you're passing a cemetery and you expect to see spirits, you may very well see one materialize if their thought form is focused there at that moment. But yet at the same time, they may be off playing golf in the spirit world. It's not just a one-on-one, one being, one soul, one right here form, the way it is here in physical form. Think particle and wave. All right. Speaking of waves, I'm going to introduce the astounding way to stop the inner critic and the self-talk by recapping a story I told, I think, 2 months ago when we got our new boat. That's the wave reference. I call this technique, no, okay, the guy said, stop, you're about to give it away. Okay, never mind. When we bought our new boat, the previous owner, Jim, volunteered to come along for the day and teach us the boat's idiosyncrasies. Now, he had met Ty and I during the survey. We were all friendly and chatty and joking and having a lovely time. And he sold the boat to us. And so we go to get underway for the first time all day, and the boat is now ours, and the previous owner is with us. I'll keep this short for those of you who have heard the story. But I turned to Jim and I said, you may see a different side of my husband today. He's going to be a little curt with everybody. He's in mission mode. Don't take it personally. And Jim's like, no problem, no problem. And Ty said to me, why don't you take her out of the slip? Now, this is my first time to drive a boat with 2 engines. And getting out of the slip was no problem. It was just pull straight ahead, no big deal. But ahead was an opening drawbridge. You have to maneuver the boat just right, call the bridge, go through the narrow opening. It's a little tense. As I'm approaching that drawbridge, getting closer, Jim starts telling a story, a funny family story. Not the time to be telling a story in my mind, because I'm going to focus on the bridge. Clearly not the time in Captain Ty's mind, because suddenly I have never heard this man in 26 years of marriage, 27 years of knowing him. I have never heard him say this. He turns and he says very seriously, "Silence on the bridge." We just instantly, everybody tensed. Let me tell you, we had instant silence on the bridge. I tried not to laugh because I'm still focused on getting through the drawbridge, but I just turned to Jim and I shot him a look that was kind of like, "I told you so, right? I warned you." Turns out later, Ty says, "Well, it was just natural. It came out." That's what we used to say in the Navy all the time when he was a destroyer captain, right? But I had not served on ships in my 20 years in the Navy and had never heard anybody say this, let alone my husband. But let me tell you, it was effective. So that background story, I tell it again, because this technique that I'm going to tell you, I have named the silence on the bridge technique. As a medium, I can tell you that the biggest challenge that most mediums face is this little voice, mostly before you start a session with somebody else, that says, "What if I fail? What if I don't get anything? What if they laugh at me? What if, what if, what if?" The what if voice gets in the way because it just blocks the connection. We have to learn techniques to set it aside, and this technique does it. But it's not just mediumship. How many times does the little voice talk you out of things you'd like to do? It's the quintessential question: what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And how many times do your nerves get in the way? Maybe you're about to do some public speaking and that little voice is just talking, your legs start shaking. What if you had a tool that instantly got rid of that voice? Well, I'm going to take you back to the bridge of our boat Gratitude, because that's where this lesson came to me, and it came from my guides, and I'll explain to you, as they did for me later, why it works. So I'm bringing our boat into our marina down here in South Carolina now. It's the third time that I was at the helm to do it. We've gone out several times in the boat, and our marina is actually in a nice little protected harbor that you have to go through a lock where the water goes up and down first. You go through a lock, then you go down a narrow passageway and you get in front of our slip, and you have to pivot the boat completely before bringing it into the slip. I had done it twice before, and I'm happy to say I did it well. And well in driving a boat means you didn't crash into anything. That's always the measure of well done on a boat, right? Anytime you come into the pier without hitting a piling or the pier is a good landing. So I had done it well, but each time I ended up, my legs just shaking like a leaf. Even though I surrendered everything to spirit, it was that constant, oh, what if I, what if I, what if I? And it caused me to overcorrect each time. And once you give it a little too much gas, then you have to pull it off. And it was nerve-wracking, but I was proud I did okay. So this last time, just a couple of weeks ago, as I start to bring the boat into the lock, all of a sudden my guide said, clear as day, put your tongue against the roof of your mouth. Now, all of you just did it now, I hope. Don't curl your tongue. Don't point your tongue. If this is the roof of your mouth and this is your tongue, just move it up and mold it, flatten it perfectly. And your tongue, the front of it will naturally rest on that ridge right behind your teeth, the soft palate, right? Right there. I did that as I'm coming in the lock, and all of a sudden, there's no inner voice. There's no fear. And when there's no fear, driving a boat is very intuitive. Many activities are intuitive. You can pay attention to what you need to do. And there was a moment where I forgot, my tongue came back down, and they said, put it back up there again, put the tongue back up there, and brought it all the way into the rest of the lock. We stayed while they lowered and raised the water. I couldn't wait Now, I couldn't wait to try and see now when we get in the really tricky part, what happens. So now we get out of the lock. I can't tell anybody what's happening. Like, this is so cool. Where'd the voice go? So I go down the narrow part and I'm consistently reminding myself, put the tongue up there, put the tongue up there. And the intuition is in full force now. I just knew exactly how to handle the boat because higher consciousness is driving the boat. I'm just doing the action. Now we get down to the part where I had to pivot it. And this is really tricky, but it's such a cool maneuver where you just twist the engines and it pivots on a dime, this 50-foot boat. And so up goes the tongue, zero fear. The boat twisted like it never had before. And I literally, pardon my language, I said it just like this. I went, this is so freaking fun. And that's the whole point. Life is supposed to be joyous, but with that inner critic, it's drowning out everything and it blocks the fun. I was incredulous. And our good friends, Mike and Beth from Wolf's Message, Wolf's parents, if you read Wolf's Message, you know about Mike and Beth, they were with us on that boat ride. So I couldn't wait to tell them about this discovery. And we got to talking about it. And Beth is a veterinarian, a scientist. She and I were so curious. Why did that work the way it did? Well, they went home, and on the way home, Mike was driving, so she's Googling it, and I'm Googling it. I'm Googling methods of, I'd heard something about, touching the palate with your tongue, pointing it, and I wasn't finding any reason for why this might work. I'd heard it was a meditative tool, and Beth texted me a link to an article about some Buddhist monks who said, relax the tongue. It helps you relax in meditation. And I tried that. If you just relax the tongue in the mouth, not touching anything, I said, no, it's not the same. That's not it. This is not just a form of relaxation. This is complete cessation of fear, complete cessation of the inner critic. So what have I told all of you to do when you don't understand something? Ask your guides. Yes, exactly. So the next morning I went into meditation right here across the room and I said, why did that work? Why does that work? They gave me this scientific explanation that blew my mind, especially when they told me, ask Gail Van Cannigan to validate this. Gail is a dear friend of mine. I've had her on my podcast. She's an energy worker, an energy healer who does beautiful work. She's a trained Donna Eden energy practitioner, and she really understands the body's energy circuits, the meridians. What the guides told me and what Gail validated absolutely afterwards is this. All of us have a main meridian that runs up the front of your body, right up the center of you, and ends right here in the center of your lower lip. It's called the central meridian, and it is a conduit for yin energy, as in yin and yang. Yin is the feminine energy. And we all have a second main meridian that runs straight up your back, up the back of your neck, around your head, down the forehead, down here, and ends here. And it's called the governing meridian. And it's the conduit for yang energy. So you have the two main circuits in your body, one running up the back and down the front, running up the front, they meet here. And the guide said, when you put your tongue up like that, what you're doing is completing the circuit, joining yin and yang, and in this unification of these opposite energies, you experience wholeness. And when you're in a state of wholeness, of completion, a complete circuit, ego has no place, has no voice. Fear has no legs to stand on. check with Gail Van Canagan. I did. She sent me diagrams of the central and governing meridians. She said, this is a technique we've taught people for overcoming trauma and when you're in fearful situations. So I had never heard of it, but to have it used in that situation was helpful on the boat. But then I taught it to students at the Monroe Institute 2 weeks ago because I had just learned it. And you can see why I call it silence on the bridge. Instant silence. I taught it to the students, then sent them into an exercise pairing up one-on-one. And that's when the one student raised her hand. She said, Suzanne, this is a game changer. And it really is. Another woman came up to me and she said, you know what? Several years ago, I had a bridge, literally a bridge put in her teeth, and it caused her to hold her tongue differently in her mouth, up against the roof of her mouth. She said, for the first time in years, she understands why, since that was put in, she has experienced profound silence and peace because the monkey mind settled down, the chatter settled down. I went to North Carolina to lead the retreat last weekend, and my beautiful friend Irene went with me to help share the driving and to help me as an assistant at the retreat. She was driving my car as I was sharing this technique with her on I-95, a major highway that is always crowded. And she said, I'm going to try this when I pass tractor trailers. I can't stand passing big trucks on the highway. And she did it. Pulled around the truck, pulled back in. She turned to me and she said, oh my God, it works. And we laughed every time she passed the tractor trailer because she was able to do it with no fear. So I hope that this is a game changer for you. I have a slide I made that I want to share with you. I'll pull it up now and share the screen. Let's see. Right here. I love how this is a moving slide. This is a diagram showing electrical circuitry. This is how anybody who studied electronics and electricity would understand how a circuit works. That moving part in the middle is a diagram for a switch. When you have a light switch, you have two wires. One is the power source and one goes to the piece of equipment. And the switch is in the open position when the light is off. When you flip a light switch on, that little switch closes and completes the circuit, and then the power runs. So I just find that a beautiful way of understanding what's happening when you put the tongue up against the top of your mouth. It's like closing that circuit. And now your power, masculine and feminine, can run through you. Ego doesn't have a voice. So play with this. And as I said, when I was bringing the boat into the lock and into the slip, I had to repeatedly put my tongue back up there. So it takes awareness to use this practice. But I have this little note right here. It's been on my desk. Let's see if you can see it there. It's been on my desk since I learned this technique. TOROM, just my little reminder, tongue on roof of mouth. So if I find something that's making me nervous when I sit to do a reading, I haven't really had to use it because I don't get nervous in my readings anymore. But certainly in the rest of our lives, it just applies to everything. So I hope you have fun with this. I would love to get some feedback from some of you. So if you use this, send an email to admin@SuzanneGiesemann.com and let me know if it has been a game changer for you. Really, really good stuff. Oh, wasn't that helpful? So simple. Why aren't people teaching this? Well, we are now. Let's see. Rather than answer some questions right there, I'm going to move on. Bev, at some point, we're going to bring Valerie in. So you're going to have to find her. I'm not sure how you're going to do that. If you can find her and make her a co-host, that might help. Okay, but that'll be more towards the end of the evening. So I want to dispel a myth that a dear friend sent me a question, and it upset me that he had this misunderstanding, and I want to make sure that nobody else goes around fearing that our loved ones, that we're bothering our loved ones if we talk to them too much or talk to them at all. A medium told this friend of mine that his loved one would not be around because the person here, my friend, had to get used to being without his loved one. And the spirit had to leave his life behind and concentrate on being a soul. Well, it just doesn't work like that. And this threw my friend back into deep depression. And the reason it doesn't work like that is because we are not just souls and we're not just human. We are source and expression. We are humans and we are souls. We are all consciousness, dancing and morphing and becoming and playing. And it's all about connection and growth and learning. And if it will bring you more healing to drop in and pay a visit, of course that soul is going to be around you. If you are doing your best to raise your consciousness, to bring more love into this world, and as hopefully a byproduct of that, you will raise your vibration to such a point that you'll be able to sense your loved ones, why would they not show up for you then? Just go to your heart. Your soul already knows the answer to that. A soul can work on their own issues across the veil. And the guide said, you better explain that. The soul doesn't exactly have issues. The life it took on, it may still be processing experiences in that role, still across the veil outside of a body. But that can take place on either side of the veil. And the interaction with others, relationship, is how we all grow in our roles. So I just want to assure all of you that spirits are around you. They know that you want to sense them. They'll make their best efforts. There may be times, short periods, when they give you some space, but they don't withdraw forever. They just don't. They're part of your lives forever. All right. Very good. Let's see. I'll do one more, then we'll answer some more questions, then some more teaching. I still have part 2 of the watermelon story to share with you. And then I told you one time this last month when I really embarrassed myself, I'm going to out myself on that too. So we still have quite a bit to go here. Do you find yourself getting sucked into the human drama a lot? My guides gave me the most amazing analogy for this. Once again, sitting across the room in my morning meditation with my dogs under the chair for good energy, I'm in a beautiful expanded state of awareness. And when I sense the daily message coming through, I reach over and I pick up my iPad. I hold that expanded state. I open the iPad and I create an email and I type the message to myself so that I can then post it later. And I've trained myself to hold that expanded state. But this particular morning, as I reached for the iPad, something snagged my attention in one of the emails that was already in my inbox. And next thing you know, I was completely back into alpha brainwave, back into human mode, the human story. I got sucked right into the drama from this beautiful state of meditation. Can you relate? I'm sure I'm not the only one that has happened to. So all of a sudden, the guides showed me the most unlikely analogy for what had happened there. They showed me a little handheld vacuum cleaner. And they showed me it's just like the ego is the vacuum cleaner, and it just sucks you in. And all the stuff that you don't want to get wrapped up in is going round and round and round in the little vacuum cleaner. And they said that's exactly what happens when you're not aware. But the key, which was so cool, is what do you do when you get sucked into the drama? You turn off the power. You no longer give any power to the story. And it really is like flipping a switch. Just like the circuitry we talked about here, picture the circuit, right? You turn off the power to the ego, say, set the story aside, and there's no more sucking you into the drama. So like anything on this path, it takes awareness and it takes focus and intention. Whatever you're trying to achieve, train yourself to remain focused and centered and aware when you go off track or when you get sucked into the drama. And when you do, just say, I'm just not going to give any more power to that. And it goes away. ego, the story, thrives on giving it power. And what do we mean by that? Giving it your attention, right? Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I've failed at that in the past. Oh, I might fail at that again in the future. Well, now you know how to get silence on the bridge, right? Up goes the tongue. Just don't give it any more power. And let's go back to something that feels better. So little fun analogy there. Let's see. We'll take a few questions now, Bev.
Okay. This is anonymous. In every incarnation, does only one soul inhabit our body, or could it be a combination of souls?
My guides are showing me the perfect 1:1, 1-to-1 ratio. I have heard stories of walk-ins, and they literally just now said, don't go there. It's so unique, and it's just focus on the life you're living, they say. 1-to-1. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Another one?
Daniel asks a question about the environment. How soon will sea level rise impact more communities that are currently experiencing it? How fast is this process going to be?
Okay, I got a couple lip twitches to that because I don't have an answer at this level. The lip twitch is always my guides listen to us for this one. They're showing me very, very slow, and that things can be turned around by decisions made here at the human level to honor Mother Earth. And we do not speak in terms of timelines, for that would be usurping your power to make positive choices. But it is shown as very slow, and that there is time to make a difference. Okay.
Thank you. Annie asks, if the light is turning up and the veil is thinning, can those across the veil see us and communicate with us more clearly?
Okay, good question. They say that we have always seen you quite clearly, and when you cross the veil, you will see how clearly you too can see your loved ones who are still here in physical form. What is meant by this statement about the veil thinning is that we as a species, a body of the human body as one whole, humanity, are raising our consciousness to the point where more are aware of the greater reality. So it's really a thinning from our perspective due to our efforts to raise consciousness, due to more people becoming awakened to who we are, and due to the alignment of the planets and the solar systems. Many factors at work here. Okay, and I'll move on now for a little bit, okay? Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I hope you're getting a lot out of this. I love the energy you're sending our way. Okay. So I have a new way to play the sign game with those in the spirit world. It was a real duh moment for me that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. As I told the story last month, and it plays into part 2 this month, I had a beautiful experience of asking my guide Boris, let me feel what it feels like when you're not in my field. Our guides are so present with us all the time. That's our normal way of being. So you can ask your guide in meditation, so you're super tuned in, step out of my field and let me feel what it feels like when you're not around. So I did that with Boris, and it was, for me, drastically different. We did this with 200 people at the retreat last weekend, and not everybody felt it. So if you don't sense something, work on your own sensitivity over time in meditation. But it is very possible to feel a difference when your guide deliberately steps out. And he stepped back in, and it was just like a hum, but this hum is my normal way of being. So I played the sign game with him, and I said, Boris, just to validate that we had this experience together, I'd like you to give me the sign of watermelon. And that's the story I told last month, that he gave me the most astounding, in my face, over and over images of watermelons at the end of the day, leading me to it step by step, but I didn't know I was being led to the watermelon. Now, here's the new way to play this sign game. I have been teaching for years that what I just demonstrated is how you play the sign game. Okay, my loved one. Okay, my guide. If this is really you, I want you to show me the sign of, and I teach that in that moment when you pause, it's your guide or your loved one who's going to put the thing you ask for into your mind. And that's exactly what happened. Boris put watermelon in my mind, knowing he was going to lead me to those magical moments with the watermelon. And so we have to get used to the fact that the thoughts that are put into our mind are not always our own. Well, here's the new way of playing the sign game, because it gets really cumbersome to teach what I just taught you that way. I sat down after the monthly mentoring last month, and Boris said to me, "Why don't you just ask me?" In other words, instead of saying, "Boris, if this is really you, why don't you give me the sign of he was saying, just say, "Boris, what sign are you going to give me?" That was my job moment. And so from now on, folks, I'm not going to go through that big litany. We're just understanding they have the big picture, the higher perspective. Trust that they see what you're going to be led to, or what you're going to encounter, or what's coming down the path for you. And they're going to tell you this sign that will pop up in your awareness because they told you about it. So you don't have to be the one asking for it, other than asking them, what sign are you going to give me? And whatever pops into your mind, they will have put it there. So if I had said, "Boris, what sign are you going to give me?" he would have said, "Watermelon." This is the thing about signs. It needs to be somewhat unusual, somewhat random. We don't always have watermelon around the house. I had no plans to go to the grocery store that day, and Ty was not going to go to the grocery store. So that was a good sign, but it's not going to be something totally off the wall, like a picture's going to fall off the wall. It'll be something reasonable, because the guides know what will be the perfect sign for you. So I hope that you will get in the habit of playing the sign game with your guides and with your own loved ones when you sense their presence. Hey, that was really you. What sign are you going to send me? Let's keep it simple, he says. So that's just part one. Part two of the watermelon thing. It was absolutely magical. So magical that I have a little plastic watermelon slice across the room right over there to remind me of it. I have another one down where I brush my teeth. Every morning now I go to pick up my toothbrush. There's this plastic watermelon slice. And I just say, "Hey, Boris, I hope this is going to be a good day." I hope that you all will have little reminders like that too, to just let you know you're not alone, that your loved ones are right here with you, and that by engaging them often like that, "Hey, how you doing? I acknowledge that you're part of my life. I love you. I'm grateful for you." You really get in the habit of living in both worlds at once, and it's a beautiful way to live. So I sat to meditate last month, like 2 weeks after the watermelon thing. And I sat and I was so surprised to suddenly be getting a lesson in how to see faces better in my readings. Some of you who are working on mediumship that would like to improve your clairvoyance, pay special attention to this. They started throwing photos of my parents onto the screen of my mind in my meditation. Pictures that I very clearly recognized but hadn't thought of in years. And they said, "This is what the spirits who come to you can do. It's much easier to recreate a slice in time in the form of a photo than to materialize in front of you if you're not used to seeing faces like that." And they continued to put pictures in my mind's eye of my parents. And it was so beautiful. And they said, "A slice in time, just like a slice of watermelon." And I thought, oh, that's funny. Good one, good pun. So Then they showed me a box that I had just come across in the cabinet downstairs. In fact, I brought it upstairs with me here. Look at this box. You see how old it is? I was looking for something in the cabinet and I pushed this box aside. I didn't open it, but I briefly thought, oh, that's full of those old stereograph pictures that my dad used to have. Stereograph is an old time antique thing. Before they had TV and movies, they were these 3D pictures. It's two pictures side by side. You put them in this little machine and you look through it like this, and it makes the picture go 3D. We had this 2 boxes filled with those antique things like this. Well, the guides put in my mind's eye, I don't want to embarrass my dad, but he's across the veil and can't be embarrassed anymore. But he was actually bald. But nobody ever saw him bald because he wore a hairpiece. From the day I was born, my dad wore a hairpiece. And this box, they put in my mind, a memory I'd forgotten, was what his hairpiece sat in at night on a little piece of hard foam. So that brought back lovely memories. I'm thinking of this box, and my guides said to me, that box contains slices of time, like a watermelon. And I thought, yeah, those stereogram pictures. Well, I went downstairs, and as I was passing the room where the cabinet is, I got snagged. Go in and look in the box. So I did. And I looked in the box, and it wasn't what I thought it was at all. It wasn't stereogram pictures. It's some of the stamp collection my dad had. Here's some old stamps, but these things are called first day covers. They're the first day of issue of a stamp from multiple countries. This is Japan, and they put them on an envelope, and you can see they're just different pictures here. And suddenly the guides are saying, pick one, pull one out randomly. And my hand I'm reaching over here because I pulled it out. My hand reached in, and I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. It grabbed a whole chunk of them like this. And I pulled it out and literally went, ah, so loud that Ty thought something was wrong. He was in the kitchen, and I said, you won't believe what happened. You won't believe what happened, Ty. And he got mad at me because he was worried. He thought something was wrong. And it was another spirit moment. Maybe you will understand why I gasped. This is the slice in time that I pulled out randomly after that lesson by my guides. Do you see what that is? A slice of watermelon. I didn't even know what was in this box. Look at all the cards in here. What are the chances that my guides in meditation would talk about what was in this box is a slice in time, like a slice of watermelon? My hand goes in as if on automatic, pulls out a slice of watermelon from a Japanese first day cover from Lord knows what year. That to me is the thinning of the veil right there. That's a no other explanation moment. That to me shows this world is not as solid as we think. It is like a simulation. And I could just feel my dad and my guides across the veil rejoicing with me, even though Ty was a little bit, had it with the gasping, you know? So I just hope that all of you will come to know how very guided we all are at all times, and will follow the nudges inside. We'll ask your guides from signs, because it really makes life magical. How about a question, Bev, as I just make sure we're covering everything?
Okay. Janet says, with such conflicting information about diets, I was wondering, does spirit have an optimum diet for health and healing?
Yes, they say, listen to your body. Those of us who went to the Boone retreat, we're looking forward to the vegetarian diet, and many of us, our bodies rebelled, and we were laughing so much. You know, you get used to what is good for your own body. You know what sits well with you, and a change in diet will quickly show you. Your body has to adjust to that. So just listen to your body, and it will tell you. And your heart, listen to your heart, absolutely. And they say there is, right now they said it, there is no one recipe. I'm going to move on, Bev, because I don't want to run out of time. I do want to bring Valerie in before we run out of time, but I do want to tell you about a magical moment that happened at that retreat. And it has to do with, again, just how real is this physical world? It's very real. But when there are higher energies and higher beings that can interact with us, when it gets a message across, like the slice of watermelon and the story I'm about to tell you, it shows you the awakened way. You are not only human, you're part of one big web connecting all that is. And the creative force of the universe is love, 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 love. So I had roughly loosely planned out how this 4-day retreat that I led was going to go. And I wanted to have this really special closing ceremony. And I was shown to talk about, have a storyboard on which we left behind parts of our story that we no longer needed. And I had tried to be really creative, and I bought these little Velcro discs, and I had these little Velcro balls. And my conception was people were going to take what they no longer needed, infuse it into that ball, and throw it at the board and leave it attached to the Velcro. But we had about 200 people. So in the back of my awareness was, this might get into a bit of a log jam. It could end up being not quite as sacred as you want it to be. But I had bought these things, and by God, we're going to go through with this ceremony. So I have Bev and Lynette and Irene taping these little Velcro discs. They're about 6-8 inches across, about 12 of them, to this big whiteboard. But it was turned away from the audience, so nobody could see what it was. But they strapped those things down so tightly. Irene's pulling on them to make sure that when we pulled the balls off of them, they wouldn't come off. Lynette and Bev can tell you they were on there tight. But still, this little voice in me saying, this might not be the best thing to do. It was a brand new thing I was going to try. I had in the back of my mind an alternate way that we could do this that might be a little more sacred. I hope you can tell by the way I'm couching this that always you got to listen to that little voice. You got to listen to that voice. Clearly, I was not listening, because we were 10 minutes away from the closing ceremony of what was an absolutely magical 4 days together. I'm standing on the stage. The whiteboard is off to my side. I'm starting to introduce the exercise, and I kid you not, 4 of the discs came flying off the board. I can see Bev and Lynette nodding their head, and they hit the floor, clatter, 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 so much so that we all looked over. It was impossible that happened all at once. These 4 little discs just, and I just burst out laughing, because it came with this absolute knowing that Spirit did it and said, don't you dare do the exercise the way you think you're going to do it. You're going to do it this way. And what we did was we had everybody write on a piece of paper what they wanted to leave behind, what had changed and what they no longer needed, and then ball it up. And they walked by the board where my lovely assistants were standing, and they left it in a basket. And I got to greet everybody and say bye-bye to everybody before we joined in a circle. And then afterwards, the girls burned those in a beautiful ceremony as they left it behind. It was so much more sacred than can you imagine the laughter and the disaster and the log jam of everybody throwing balls at the board. I just want you all to come to trust Spirit. And if it's in the greatest good, they will pull some pretty good stunts, like manipulating physical objects to make sure that things work out for the better. That served a big group of people, and now an even larger group as I share it with all of you. So fun story. Now for the big laugh that I did say I would share with all of you about letting go. Again, a lesson that Spirit brought to me. If you allow yourself to be guided in every moment, no matter what you're doing, Spirit will guide you. If you surrender the reins, surrender the need to control and to do things, down to the smallest thing, Spirit will guide you. So my story is a little strange, but it has to do with this little game that Ty plays. And it's after talking about sacred things, please bear with me. But we have the two little dachshunds and we take them out to walk every few hours, and we usually do it together. And we have this little bucket in the corner of our garage. I'm going to pull up a screenshot to show it to you. There's my, come on. All right. I showed you the switch. There's that, which I showed you. Now, here, this is the corner of our garage. Do you see what the arrow's pointing to? That little bucket is where Ty deposits poop bags, I'm sorry to say. But he makes a game out of it. From where I'm taking the picture, he will lob those things, overhand, underhanded, rebounds off the garage door. The man should have been a Harlem Globetrotter. He should have been a professional basketball player. He can shoot, he can hit that bucket there from 30 feet, 50 feet away, and he prides himself on tossing the poop bags into that basket very well. So in about a month ago, it was dark, getting dark, and he turned to me and he said, "Your turn." And I said, "I'll show you, Ty." And I just gave it all I had. And I hate to tell you, but this is what happened. The arrow at the top, some of you might have your picture covering it up. Do you see that arrow at the top? Do you see that little green thing on the roof? That is the result of my pitching the poop bag. Well, I didn't think I was ever going to hear the end of this. I was accused of throwing like a girl. My worst fear was that Ty was going to pull out a ladder while I was gone to teach the retreat and fall off the ladder. I said, "Do not go retrieve that if I'm not here." We'd had 2 serious accidents in our community from people climbing ladders when nobody was holding it. So I was very proud that he did get it down later without my help. But the reason I bring this up, this silly story, is because my guides gave me a lesson in letting go. And I said, "Ty, now that you got that down, I need to try this again." So I stood about 40 feet away. And as I pulled back my arm, the guide said, "Let us direct your arm." And I literally, instead of forcefully, like I ended up on the roof, just let go. I swear that thing swerved in midair and went right in the bucket. Right in. I have on the wall over here a golf scorecard of the only other time that happened to me, when I completely just let go. It was like God stepped into my body to play golf, and the guides just said, "That is exactly what happened. You are all God in physical form. And if you will get out of the way and stop trying, magical things will happen." So if this story helps you to remember to ask to be guided, to surrender, then beautiful things will happen. All right. So speaking of that retreat, I want to bring Valerie Kwietniak in. She's one of my beautiful team members. She's the ones that fields emails from everybody. So she's the first one to see emails when they come in and answers them personally for me and passes on those that I really need to see. So Bev, is Valerie here? There we go.
Yeah.
So there's Valerie, and she's such a beautiful soul. And she shared with me an experience she had after the retreat that I know will resonate with a lot of you. And I asked her if she would do us the honor of sharing it with it, because it's just a beautiful lesson for all of us. So go ahead, Valerie.
Okay, well, a few minutes into meditation, after asking my guides, what is it? What would you want me to know today? I heard the words, "I am not less than. I am not more than. I am." And then they gave me an image. And after meditation, I sat down and drew it. And you have the image.
I do. Let me put it up here for you. Okay. I hate to bring up this image here, but there it is. Okay. Just like the mathematical symbol.
Yes. And it was very powerful. And at first I thought, is this a rune?
Huh.
Because I'm familiar with some of the runes, and I looked it up, and no, it's not a rune. But I just thought it was a powerful image, and I knew that it had something to do with the question that you had us ask ourselves. Which belief system is holding me back? So that less than, I am not less than. Oh, I'm not more than. I am. And it just, I don't know, it took away that less than belief system. So I thought, this is powerful, but there was more to come. Because later, when I got in the shower, of course, you said yourself that, many times we get these downloads while in the shower. It has something to do with the water running. And what I received was information that had to do with a generational belief system of I am less than. And many in the family had taken this belief system on, and in order to counter-react it, they overcompensated by going the extreme. I am more than, which led to some narcissistic behaviors in some family members. But some family members, for fear of becoming narcissistic, remained in that I am less than. And it gave me such an understanding. And I believe that understanding is the antidote to judgment. Because once you understand something, you stop judging. And I spent the day just reflecting on that. And it helped me to stop judging myself as well as other family members. It gave me some understanding and compassion as well. So, was that it? Oh no, there was more. There's always more. I go upstairs. I'm doing my hair, and my guides tell me, take your left arm above your head, fingers pointing upwards, palm to the right, and say, I am not less than. Now, take your right hand and do the same. Above your head, fingers pointing upwards. Do not touch your hands, and say, I am not more than. Now, join your hands above your head. I am. So I've been doing that every day since. And it was a way to embody the truth, this truth that my guides gave me. And I'm continuing to just allow it to be in me, I'm allowing it to be in my mind, fall into my heart, and just really embody the whole message. So it has been really powerful. Just that I am and then how clever they were to use those symbols, the less than, more than symbol. And in doing this, you can see the less than, more than symbols in the space in my elbows.
Exactly.
I thought it was so clever.
It's brilliant, as our guides are. Thank you so much, Valerie.
Yes.
Yeah, we thought that would be
You're
wonderful to share with all of you, because that less than, more than, that human story is what gets in the way of us realizing I am. I am what? I
Yeah.
am with nothing after it means I am this source,
Yes.
consciousness.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
You're welcome.
So we've already filled the 2 hours, and I'm checking in with the guides, and they're showing me that we do have to learn to flow. And in the past, I would have said, we have to do this group healing. We have to do the channeling session. And they said there are no have tos, that the assignment I would love to give all of you is to do that meditation that we just put online today. Like I said at the beginning, to go find the one called, go to YouTube, Suzanne Giesemann. We'll put the link in the video here. Find freedom and find the God within. That is the I am that Valerie and all of us are always talking about. That part of you that has nothing that comes after I am. Experience yourself without the story. And that's freedom. And that's what Valerie found in that moment, in spite of the generational wounds. So, yes, I know. Yeah, we were going to do a group healing session, and they said group healing begins with the individual. So find the healing by doing that meditation on your own and heal yourself within. And as you heal, those around you heal as well. So we'll end here this evening. Lots to think about, huh? Some laughs and some serious things and some evidence of the other side. I hope that it's helped you a lot. I thank you so much for joining us. Bev and Lynette, thank you so much as always. And I hope you all just have a beautiful, beautiful month. I hope to see you back here next time. Bye-bye.